Hello, class. Today we're talking about sequential illustration, dealing basically with magazine and cartoons. And we're going to jump right in with a look at some older stuff all the way through some of the most modern of creators. And I'm going to start off with Lansing Campbell, whose dates are very hard to come by, but he was active within 1910 through the 1950s, and his most famous character was Uncle Wiggily Longears. And there were a huge number of children's books put out with Uncle Wiggily, including board games, and I'm not sure if animation was involved. However, the children's books, the Uncle Wiggily characters and supporting characters became very common. And these are two shots of Uncle Wiggily as he's depicted with his top hat and long-tailed coat and gloves. I believe he's got gloves on in the one shot, but not in the other. But Uncle Wiggily is consistently drawn with these particular props throughout a number of his stories, from book to book. If you see the top hat and the long ears there, you're just like, oh, that is Uncle Wiggily. So there's a consistency of character that's developed, and it's needed within sequential illustration to create a consistency. And as we go through, we're going to talk about that even further. Eleanor Campbell, who was most famous as the creator of many books for the educational region of illustration with the Dick and Jane educational primers. She's a classically trained painter who studied at the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts, but we know her very well for this whole 1940s, or actually 1930s through 1950s style of illustration. Very Leave It to Beaver and Andy Griffith from the looks of it. I mean, the kids are just rosy-cheeked and always smiling and living in the happy USA here. But this is a part of the primer for, I believe it's Go Dick Go, which is one of the first ones. And this here, we're seeing Dick standing on his head, and he's saying, "Look, look." And eventually he falls over with the basket of leaves, and look, look, oh, look. So we're learning to read with Dick and Jane. But Eleanor Campbell, she creates a consistency of character. We notice that he's got a red sweater, brown pants, blue socks in the one image. We're on the left, and at the end of the little story here, we see the basket, which we understand was the basket from the first picture, is now flipped upside down. He still has his blue socks, he still has his red sweater and pants. However, now they are hidden by the basket or by leaves. But the consistency of character helps us to understand that this is Dick before the action, and there's Dick after the action. Norman Rockwell created a character called Willie Gillis during the World War II era, and it ran on various covers of the Saturday Evening Post, and it began with a simple illustration of one of his neighbors, I believe, who posed for the Willie Gillis character, depicted as a raw recruit who received a care package from home in 1941. And then Mr. Rockwell proceeded to paint various covers with Willie, and this happens to be Willie the Gillises through history. And you notice that they've all served in the various wars of the United States, and Willie's picture is pinned up at the very bottom in black and white. But through 1946, when Willie Gillis was finally represented as coming home and studying for college on the GI Bill, Mr. Rockwell kept the same character, the same model was used over and over again in the various situations. So he, throughout month to month, year to year, this character stayed consistent, and we understood when we saw the helmet and this skinny little neck and smiling face that Willie Gillis was up to something. And we're jumping ahead to Saul Lambert, who was known for some covers of the Elie Wiesel books. One about Treblinka called Night. And this is actually a piece from, I believe, here we have Jane Lander Associates is what's listed here, but I thought it was a different article. But it's a shell game. Underneath one of the shells in the top piece, we see a peace dove, and down below we see all three shells. So the sequence is such that these two illustrations can be separated, and most likely were separated via text. The shell game below may have been the first in the sequence, and then the shell game above, where the dove is revealed, may have been the end. But either way, we see this as a before and after situation. And here we have both of these laid out on the same page. The sequence is apparent because we notice the shells in the top one and then shells below in the second one. They are spaced the same as below and above. They are the same texture as below and above. They are rendered in black and white below and above. So we get the idea that this is a sequence in time, before, after. Tumbling Creek Tales. This is a piece done by Robert Allison, who was active in the 1960s. And this is a book of collected writings and humorous prose by Peck Gunn, who was a humorist and actually was poet laureate of the state of Tennessee. But this artwork is all done in a naive style. Mr. Allison was actually a convict in the state prison system of Tennessee, and I guess he was, I don't know if he was coerced into doing this, but he actually was used by Peck Gunn to illustrate his book. And here we see stories about Tumbling Creek Tales and the various situations here on the front cover of the little boy fishing and then running around through the fields and then swimming with friends and punching out the bully down at the bottom and crossing the creek. We get a good feel of this same character kind of going through life around the creek and in a bucolic atmosphere. As innocent as this is and as naive as the illustration is, it is consistent, and it's consistent through clothing, it's consistent through hair. Same red hair is being used on most of these. So we get a consistency of character built up again. Art Spiegelman, who is a cartoonist, best known for Raw Comics. He's also a winner of the Pulitzer Prize and a Guggenheim Fellowship for this particular book, which is Mouse 1 and 2, and it's about the family of Jewish folks in Germany in the 1930s and 40s going through the war and through the suffering of the Holocaust. In this particular book, Mouse, the mice are Jewish, the cats are German, and various nationalities are represented through various animals. But he develops a style. We recognize that all mice are Jewish. The minute you turn the page and you see a mouse on the page, you equate mouse equals Jewish, cat equals German. Various ethnicities are represented with other animals, and you understand that, oh, just by looking at the animal type, we understand what nationality he's talking about on that page. So Spiegelman has trained us to understand the characters before we actually read the text. We understand where they're coming from, in a sense. So character and subject consistency have to be developed. Now, how's that done? Well, it's done with certain objects, such as this is a piece by Marjane Satrapi, who's a Iranian-born illustrator cartoonist. This is the Persepolis, which is a movie that was made from this particular comic about her being brought up in a pre-revolutionary and revolutionary Iran. So she's talking about her youth and changing her hairstyle in this particular sequence, but we understand as time is progressing that this is the same character. It's Marjan as she's cutting her hair. We see the scissors. We see certain characteristics about her face, which in particular is the mole on the side of her nose, and that stays consistent. So we understand that from the top left with the long hair and wide eyes to the bottom right, which is a different style of dress, a different style of hair, that this is still her, mainly because of that one little mole on her nose. Wesley Dennis, famous for his horses, but this is a sequence from the inside of a book called Flip. And Flip is about a little horse that has a dream about jumping over a stream. And these are the end papers, and we understand that this is all the same horse. It's Flip. He's got his little... He's a dark-colored horse with little white boots, or socks, I guess they call those in the horse world. But here he is skipping around through the fields, just being a colt, you know, kicking up his heels and jumping around and swishing flies. But the consistency is such in how it's drawn and how the ink is handled that we understand that every one of these is Flip. It's not just a big herd of horses. It's all the same character. These are some Tai Chi stances from Chensin's Tai Chi Chuan from 1933. And this is the same person executing the Tai Chi postures, sweeping their arms, sweeping their legs, going into different stances. We understand that this is one guy going through time. The same pants are used, the same sweater is on. If you notice, the tiny collar that sticks out of the sweater is consistent from piece to piece to piece. So we're fully capable of understanding that this is one character, but there's a sequence of time because it's consistently drawn the same way. Character sheets. Now this is a character sheet of Donald Duck from the Walt Disney Studios, and this is Donald Duck doing everything from waving hello to getting ready to pound somebody in the face in the lower right. Oh, he's even got a big old stick there to the right of Mickey on the far right. So he's going to put the beating on somebody. But the character sheets are developed for the animators and for those who are creating further illustration and I guess storyboards with this same character. And they want a consistency from hand to hand. So I would draw one way naturally and you would draw another way. Well, when we each have this same character sheet, we can draw uniformly across a large project such as a feature film or feature animation. John Kay, who's John Crisofalusi, he has created such characters as Ren and Stimpy and George LaCour. And this is a character sheet for Flytrap, the monkey. And you can see there's all kinds of zany looks, but we understand how John sees this particular character that he's developed. Wacky Monkey. So, when creating sequential, we run into a situation, especially with magazine work, where we will need something that's called a vignette. And a vignette means a illustration without borders, so to speak. And this is Paul Basham, who's a illustrator and also a plein air painter. He's moved on from just doing illustration, and he actually has quite a gallery life. This is a piece he's done for the Field and Stream magazine, and it's called 5 Fathoms Down, and he's depicting a bit of fishing underwater. And you'll notice how the illustration merges into the world of the typesetter, and the type has to be guided around the illustration. It's very free form, very amoeboic, soft edge, and it merges. It really does a very pretty kind of gesture where the illustration meets the type. And this is a classic vignette. Likewise, Everett Peck, who has just got a great style here, and we see a vignette where Everett's character is very much living within the column. If you look at his feet are living within the 2-column structure border. However, as you move up into the upper body, where his armpits reach out and he's holding the radio, you'll notice that it overflows the edges of the border of those columns, creating a vignette situation in the upper section. It's a really nice transition. And Everett's work, this is not just illustration. He's also known for his animation also, doing Squirrel Boy, Rugrats work, and Duckman is one of his famous ones, the Duckman character. And this is Brad Holland, one of the big daddies of American illustration. He's I wanted to show this because this, in a sense, is almost a reverse vignette, in my opinion, and it's where the typesetter has to work within an illustration, and they're working within the negative space created by Brad's illustration, that dark region in the middle. And this is a piece for PBS, and Chevron, I think, was the sponsor for this particular piece. But a very interesting use, and it merges that idea of image and type together, living well together. This is one of my personal pieces, and it's not as if it's personal. It's actually been published, but you'll notice my style is such where I'm using a lot of vignette and various images with text wrapping in and living among the imagery. There's no real border. There's a assumption that you're most likely going to start reading at the upper left, and you're going to go to the right and then back down to the left and then to the right again. I'm expecting you to read in a certain manner. However, I'm not dictating that you read in a certain manner. Each of these ideas generally can stand alone on the page and be read in various sequence. I'm not dictating the sequence to you, although I'm assuming you're going to read in a certain sequence. It is not critical in the way that I'm working this particular illustration. And we're only seeing half of this illustration. It's a full newspaper page. However, you get the gist of what I'm doing here. This is in stark contrast to styles such as Jean Giraud, who created, who was known as Mobius, the illustrator Mobius, and this is his work for the black incal. And the incal, as you notice, is within rectangles, and the sequence is such that it is top left, reading to the right, and then return hard to the left and read to the right again for these four panels. So it's very rigid in the fact that it is held within a box. It's the opposite of the vignettes. It's reliant on edges. So as we back up, not reliant on edges, reliant on edges. So sequential illustration. Which one is right? Well, that's up to you. Sequential illustration is generally focused on a depiction of the passage of time or a story's progression. It's reliant on character or object consistency across multiple pages of text. It's capable of long shelf life, such as books, but it's also capable of being very short-lived within magazines or instructional documents, such as how to assemble a vacuum cleaner. It's executed in most mediums, and the reason I'm saying most is because it can be done from pencil on up to digital. But generally speaking, there is a lot of care that's done with these types of works. It's commissioned by book companies, magazines, comic companies, storyboarding interests such as animation houses, or people that use preliminaries for things like commercial work, as in television commercials. You need storyboards to create a sale for shooting a film, rather than hiring the actors doing the film and then getting rejected. Likewise, it's everything from low paying to high paying. It depends on your client, it depends on the job, it depends on the visibility. So, sequential illustration is across the board. I think we all have to understand it, because it will be required from us as illustrators as we get into this great career. So understand it, understand the requirements of consistency, because that is the utmost. So character consistency, color consistency, the consistency of how you apply the medium to the final board. You've got to keep it together. Don't get sloppy and leave one halfway done, or pull out a whole new set of tricks to show the same character, because that will be an inconsistency in the progression. So keep it consistent, and that's the main takeaway from this. All right, talk to you later.